Hey, what's up everyone? Raging Golden Eagle here, having way too much fun as always. Though this time it's going to be a slightly more restrained lower volume than usual. I'm sure the more observant among you can tell, but I'm kinda losing my voice. So since I don't know how bad it'll get and how long it'll last, I gotta try to knock out as many of these as I can before it goes away so I can have time to rest and keep up with the Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule you guys are used to. So anyway, this time around, I'm going to be going through an article I saw on Steam Spy, though only parts of it because it was a pretty big in-depth article, and if I was to do like a stream on this, I'd be talking about it for hours. So I highly suggest you read it, link in the description. Your target audience doesn't exist. Why you shouldn't talk about MOBA audience, core gamers, female gamers, and instead think smaller. And in my opinion, there should be a little asterisk there pointing out specifically when it comes to multiplayer games. We're going to get to that shortly. The basic gist of this article is pointing out how companies are, well, honestly pretty damn stupid when they jump on all these Me Too bandwagons. World of Warcraft came out and all of a sudden everyone was trying to clone it. Everyone wanted to be the next WoW. Everyone had the next WoW killer MMO planned. How did that work out? The only thing that's killing World of Warcraft is Blizzard itself stopped giving a shit. Back when it was their cash cow, it got all their love. But now, Blizzard ain't idiots. They learned that they could make a whole lot more money with a whole lot less effort by focusing on something like Hearthstone. Even though World of Warcraft still brings in a lot of money, it's slowly becoming not nearly as worth it because of the amount of effort that has to go into it. But yeah, that tangent aside, we've seen this most recently with MOBAs, as the article itself mentioned. League of Legends and Dota 2 hit it big as all of a sudden everyone came out with their own MOBA, everyone else jumped on the bandwagon. And now the latest fad seems to be Battle Royale survival style games like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. And even those are actually coming off of the heels of the colorful hero shooters like Overwatch. And we all know how all the Me Too clones have ended up. So why is this? Well, let's explore. Games, especially big ones, aren't consumer products. I'd go so far as to say that each multiplayer game is a cultural self-reinforcing phenomenon. And yes, I know it sounds like academic BS, but just bear with me here, it'll actually make sense. Relying on its perceived popularity more than on its market share. It's not enough to just offer a superior product with better marketing and brand recognition to convince people to switch from League of Legends to, say, Infinite Crisis. Yes, the latter has DC characters, TV series, comic books, and even some movies. But the former was here first and didn't just create the market, it is the market. So damn true. Same thing with, for example, the Call of Duty market. Why would the Call of Duty market leave their familiar, awesome, and well-polished game just to play your Me Too knockoff, when they can stick with Call of Duty? When World of Warcraft became the big MMO and dethroned the likes of, say, EverQuest, it's not so much because they took EverQuest's audience. Yeah, they took a few. But most of the people playing World of Warcraft never played EverQuest. World of Warcraft basically created a whole new market. It is the market, as the article stated. So no amount of trying to clone it is going to make those people leave. Not only is the original, with very few exceptions, going to be by far the most polished of your options, but on top of that, if you already have a history with the game, you already have friends there, you have a guild there, you got all the nostalgia there, you're not going to leave for some clone. You're not going to go start over unless your entire guild moves. And even then, when guilds jump games, they do often end up losing players in the process. Not everybody wants to go. So from that, let's continue with the article. We can't really talk about a genre's popularity when one game has 50% of the audience and another one is 30%. And in this case, I believe they're referring to MOBAs and the audiences of League of Legends and Dota 2 respectively. Unlike in the consumer goods market, it's not sustainable to hope for 1% of a huge market. Production costs aren't scaling down when you have a smaller game, wherein, say, soft drinks, you would just order less bottles, syrup, and water. And build less factories and the like, of course. And this is so true. When you scale down with game development, you get lower quality games. Maybe not across the board, but they have to skimp out on something. Unlike with soda, for instance. As long as operating one factory cranking out those bottles gives you a profit, it's probably going to stay around. But that aside, the article then goes into pointing out that even among audience groups, they're vastly different. I hear people talking about female gamers or core gamers a lot, but seldom do they realize that these categories don't technically exist, at least not in any practical way. And they go on to explain. The term female gamers includes both a woman in her 50s playing Candy Crush Saga on her phone and a college girl enjoying Call of Duty on her Xbox. They're so far apart from each other that it makes no sense to try to fit them into the same vaguely defined category. There are many female gamers, they're different, and there are probably dozens of categories you could divide them in. And this, funny enough, kind of shines through, and I actually read an interview recently with the Senran Kagura producer, and he basically pointed out that from what he noticed, like about 30 to 40% of his audience is women. And he went off and had this thought about how he could appeal to female audiences more, and then he decided, yeah, I don't know how to, so I'm not going to try. And at that, I just went, oh, thank God, he understands. But more importantly, these people have to understand, if like 40% of your audience is already women, you are already appealing to them. If you change something, you could very well destroy what makes them like it in the first place. We see this same thing happen every time some niche game hits it big and makes it into the mainstream. All of a sudden, the developer and publishers start thinking, oh, we're mainstream now. We need to change everything about this game to appeal to the mainstream. Failing to realize that what made it popular with the mainstream in the first place is the stuff that they're going to end up stripping out to try to appeal to the mainstream. And then they wonder why they fail. If you hit it big in the mainstream without appealing to the mainstream, clearly the mainstream already likes it. They like it the way it is. If you destroy what makes your particular product unique among all these other ones, they're gonna have no reason to stick with you anymore. So please, game developers, get that through your thick skulls, I'm begging you. I'm getting sick and tired of seeing awesome franchises get destroyed by this stupidity. Anyway, moving on to the next section. So many tangents so far, right? Like I said, I could probably rant about this for hours. No way my voice can handle it now, though. This part here basically goes over what I just said. In reference to something like, say, MOBAs being on the rise, you have to do something and apply this knowledge, right? And of course you should, but don't target any new market or new audience just because you've suddenly realized it exists. Dota 2 audience exists. There are around 55 million gamers that have tried it and 9.5 million gamers have played it in the last 2 weeks. Does that mean they're enjoying the MOBA genre? Yes. Does that mean they will even take a peek at yours? Nope, they're too busy. That right there is what these Me Too developers need to learn. As I ranted about in the very beginning of this recording, they are already invested into Dota 2. They have friends there, they have history with the game, they probably spent real-life money on it. Why would they jump ship now? I'm not saying some players won't do that, but if you want to entice them to leave, you gotta give them something truly unique, and that blows their current game out of the water. Which, again, as I mentioned earlier, is pretty hard to do because Dota 2 has been around for a long time now. They got years of polish in that game, years of bug fixing that your new game doesn't have. And if you fail to take the audience away from these big guys, you're never going to be around long enough to actually get that good. It's not a pleasant situation to be in for these Me Too developers. And then we get to the quote-unquote usual games. And here is the interesting thing. There is a market and audience for smaller games, otherwise Steam wouldn't exist. Many people are trying many new games. They don't spend hundreds of hours in one title. They're, your average gamers. But here's a catch. There aren't actually many of them. And since this is Steam Spy, they got all sorts of interesting statistics to back up what they're saying. In fact, 1% of Steam gamers own 33% of all copies of games on Steam. 20% of Steam gamers own 88% of games. So to be a member of the 1% group of Steam gamers, you have to own 107 games or more. I guess that makes me a 1%er. That's not much considering how Steam is selling games at discount prices and how easy it is to obtain games in bundles. That's definitely true. So that's to be in the top 1%, you have to own about 107 games or more. Now what puts you in the top 20% of Steam users? Of course, we could extend it to the softcore gamers, the 20% that owns 88% of all the games on the platform. To be included, you'd have to own 4 games or more on Steam. Not exactly a large number, right? And here's where the maths begin. Various studies suggest that there are 700 to 800 million PC gamers. And that's probably true, but it doesn't mean much for your game. Because if you're developing a downloadable game for Steam, you're not even fighting for 135 million of its active users. You're fighting for the attention of 1.3 million gamers that are actually buying lots of games, the 1% group. And of course, as the article mentions next, this does pretty much apply entirely to the PC. Console gamers and the console market is a little bit different, though in my personal experience there is a little bit of overlap in certain ways. For instance, I've known people who owned consoles and the only game they ever played on it was Madden, and every year they bought the new Madden and that's what they played all year until the next Madden came out. Then you had people like me. The only reason I still own a console is for the exclusive JRPGs, single-player games basically. And this is perfect as the final thought to this video. This kind of Me Too attitude that's being described in this article, in my opinion, the origin of this attitude is it's simply a leftover from the time when the vast majority of games were single-player, which is really just a little over maybe 15 years ago. Back in the day, those who had a lot of time and money on their hands could easily knock out multiple single-player games a week, and they were always in the market for more as their time and money allowed. And even with gigantic RPGs like Morrowind, for instance, eventually you're going to play it to death and you're going to have to move on to a different game. Nowadays, though, there's an entirely different market out there. Those who get into multiplayer-only games generally stick with one or two specific ones. There's only so much time these people have in the day, and a lot of these multiplayer games require daily commitment, or at the very least, say, a few days a week. At least if you want to keep up with your guildmates and maintain any semblance of community. How many simultaneous MMOs, for instance, can you realistically play? Yeah, sure, if you're just the ultimate casual, you could jump from MMO to MMO just casually leveling one character to max and then moving to the next one. But the vast majority of MMO gamers aren't like that. When they get into one multiplayer game, they generally stick to it. They're in it for the long haul. And the sooner the industry as a whole realizes this, the better off they will be. And while the overall audience may be small, the success of games targeting niche audiences is a nice bright spot in all of this. For example, look at Senran Kagura. Those games don't have all that large of an audience, but the developer knows this. They don't do like, say, what Square Enix did. They pump so much time and money into a game, I believe it was Tomb Raider, that they consider it a failure when it's sold only, and I'm doing air quotes here, 4 million copies. That's a failure by their standards. These niche game makers, they know better. They pump the vast majority of their resources into giving the niche specifically what they want, and then for everything else, they just make it playable. The reason the Senran Kagura games are so popular is because even without all the cheesecake and the anime titties, they are still better than average Dynasty Warriors clones. But even I, being the hardcore fan of that series I am, I can't even pretend that if you took all the sexiness out of these games, I probably wouldn't play them anymore. If you take out the one thing that makes it targeted to this specific niche, then even though what you're left with is better than average, it's still got nothing on, say, Dynasty Warriors itself. I'd just go play that for my Dynasty Warriors fix. So developers, instead of going around and trying to steal the audiences of gigantic games that you're never gonna get, why not look around and try to find an underserved audience and just try to give them what they want? On the topic of Steam again, there's recently been an explosion of, honestly, pornographic video games on that platform. And they're doing extremely well. It's almost as if there was an audience for these all along that's been underserved all this time. Put your ear to the ground and listen to the free market. And spoiler alert, I'll tell you right now, it's not asking for more of the same of what's already there. And that's all I gotta say, guys. Thanks for listening.